Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Project Flux podcast. And today we have two guests with us. We have Shwetha, Balaji, and Shreya Datta, both from McGill and Partners. McGill and Partners are specialist brokers in insurance and reinsurance market, and they're going to tell us about some of the stuff that they're doing both personally and within McGill's, particularly around Agentic AI. So, Shwetha and Shreya, welcome to the Project Flux podcast.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So we will try our best to get through quite a lot today. And I know that you guys are really at the forefront of a lot of this stuff that's going on. But before we get into the specific use cases, can we ask you both, just like very quickly, because the state of the market is moving so fast in terms of AI, what has been occupying your mind most lately, either professionally or personally, but from a kind of AI perspective? Shwetha, if you want to go first and then afterwards, Shreya.
Yeah, sure. So you kind of pointed that out, the buzz around AI and how things are moving on a day-to-day basis. The technology is moving fast, and I generally like to get my hands on anything new that's coming out, trying out. Like today there was a demo internally about one of the applications. I was trying to upload that recording into one of the AI tools that we have got access to see if it can produce, let's say, a visual representation of what was discussed in the meeting. There's a lot of excitement in that space, and I mean, I'm really looking forward to see how the world would move now in like 5-10 years time. Just not in the space of as an IT technology, but in medicine and aviation. I think it's impacting every industry. It's yeah.
Yeah. Do you think, Ed, before we go on to Shreya's sort of introductory comments, do you think everyone's as excited as us? Because sometimes I get the feeling like we're all very similar. We're really excited about this technology, but it's not universal. Or are you starting to see that change now and everyone's getting quite
I
excited?
say this. I have got some friends who are from a completely non-technology background. As an example, one of my friends is an accountant, and years ago, I would say months ago, she spoke to me about how she's trying to use ChatGPT in her day-to-day work. At that time, I was a bit skeptical about using AI tools, I would say. And as a non-tech person, she was talking about how, she uses AI to summarize her emails, to draft her emails going out to her clients, to summarize, let's say, accounts, etc. And I have heard this from a few friends who are not in the technology space, and I was quite surprised, I would say. So I do think that the buzz is there, and it's not just with the people who work in technology. I know a lot of people now have, let's say, Gemini or ChatGPT on their mobile phones, trying to use it on a day-to-day basis. I mean, the idea of browser and like searching in a browser is kind of slowly going down. People use ChatGPT because that can give them various options, that can give them, they're able to interact with it back and forth. I do think that it's beyond just technologists.
Yeah, it's starting to change. I agree with you. Shreya, what about you? What's the thing that's been most on your mind lately?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to answer from a slightly more micro, all about me perspective.
That's fine.
I feel
That's
like
fine.
with AI, as we were just saying, the buzz, there's been a lot of opportunities coming our way and things that I didn't, for example, like this, things I didn't necessarily think I would be doing. So I'm trying to sort of be open-minded and allow myself to sit with discomfort and like say yes to things which I never thought I'd be doing in my role. So yeah, I think professionally, I'm very much trying to embrace change, which is probably a big thing anyway when we're talking about AI. And believe in myself, I suppose, that I maybe can do things that I didn't know existed a year ago. So yeah, and I also just want to touch upon what Shweta was just saying about non-tech using AI. I think a lot of my non-techie friends actually got there before I did. And maybe that was me just compartmentalizing technology as something I do at work and not realizing that I can plan my holidays or like figure out how to care for my houseplants, just using ChatGPT, which I've never, I wasn't using it in all aspects of my life. And I've gotten a lot of ideas actually from people who aren't using it just for work, which has been interesting.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think I've heard a few people say that where people who were in technology were later to sort of adopt it for real world use cases because they almost felt like they were cheating. Like, this isn't real IT, this isn't real coding, etc.
Yeah.
And there's still a bit of that, isn't there, Yoshi, with a few people who look down on the so-called AI experts, etc. But whereas actually I think it's democratizing the ability for anyone to create a solution, whether that's AI or using some of these agents to create a solution that helps them with a real problem.
Yeah, I find that when you first step into AI and it's not your primary role, and it becomes a huge rabbit hole, and there's so much you can learn about it. So you guys having implemented it in your company, and you're kind of now in the position whereby people know you that because you've implemented it so well. But do you find that having to keep on top of it becomes overwhelming, or do you find that it's easy to kind of ride the wave and implement it because you know more than you did before?
I think it's a learning journey. It's been a learning journey for us in the organization on, of course, like you said, stepping into the world of AI and also keeping up with it. Like for example, we've gone live with an agentic AI that sits in one of our digital platforms. And Shreya is probably closer to this, but the whole idea of monitoring and being able to enhance, enrich, the agent to know more about what we do, because an agent is as good as the data that you provide to the agent, right? So how do we provide the agent access to more data so that as an agent they know more about us as an organization, more about what we want them to achieve. So it's been a learning journey for us internally, whether that's during the actual development phase, what we learned from implementing agentic AI testing. There's been a different spin to how you test agents, right? It's not black and white, as in, this is the answer that you would expect, and that's the answer that the agent provides. So we've come a long way as a team with that, and of course, monitoring and providing more information to the agent. So yeah, there is an element of course, implementing. I think I would say that there are various stages to this, right? As in, most organizations are probably at a POC stage where they're experimenting with the different tools available to them from an AI perspective. And of course, creating the trust and actually deploying that into production, into a live service, and monitoring and making sure that you're keeping up to the enhancements in the technology, you're keeping up to providing additional data, etc. So yeah.
Okay, just to go a step back, because you touched on it very slightly, I want to talk now about what you're doing at McGill's with Agentic AI. But before we do that, can one of you sort of explain for the listener, because that people get quite confused with it all, what do you understand when people talk about Agentic AI? What does it mean?
AI and like machine learning and a bit of automation, all of this has existed for a number of years. The main thing with agents that we are now seeing and referring is about how the fact that an agent can think, act, learn, and adapt to what's coming their way. I think that's the main thing. If let's say, as an example, if you're talking about a chatbot used by BT on their website, being able to answer queries, that would just be fired up, let's say, with a list of FAQs in the background. You ask the question, is this in the FAQ? Yes, the agent or the chatbot would be able to answer this, right? When it comes to agentic AI, it could still be seen by common people as a chatbot, but it's about how the AI also applies a level of intelligence, which sometimes can also be bad, right? So the agent also applies a bit of intelligence, and it is not just answering based on a set of questions and answers that's been given to the agent.
Okay. The way it was described to me as well, on top of that, was to say that agents are something that executes an action. So as well as just the sort of passive, it executes an action. So Shreya, I know you've been very involved in what McGill's are doing in terms of agentic AI. And I know you've just implemented something. So can you tell us practically what that looks like inside McGill and Partners?
Yeah, so we have built and deployed a digital agent which sits on our external facing portal that client brokers use to raise risks. I don't know too much about insurance, so I won't go into that. But it's sort of at the beginning started as like first line support for users, that instead of having to raise a ticket or send an email, they can just ask, how do I raise a risk? How do I renew something? Give me information about this specific product. Quite conversational things. I think just as well, touching upon what Shwetha was saying, the thing that it does, which a traditional chatbot or a co-pilot wouldn't necessarily do, is that it is proactive as well as reactive. So we're working on our agent being able to tell the user by the way, you have risks which are expiring in the next 60 days. Do you want me to do this for you? Or even things that would be within our interest, like promoting a cross sell. I've seen that you've done this. Would you like me to do this for you? So I think that's a difference as well. And the agent is not making decisions on behalf of the user or on behalf of us. It's very much just supporting those decisions. So it handles a lot of repetitive queries, who to contact, product features. And it's just, the idea is just to reduce complexity for users as well as speeding up efficiency for us.
Okay.
You mentioned Copilot, Shreya. Just out of curiosity, what did you use to build the agents?
We are using Salesforce's Agent Force functionality, which is their native sort of AI platform that sits on top of the Salesforce layer.
Oh, nice. I'm guessing it's quite low code, right? Low code, no code.
Yes, everything Salesforce-wise is low code, which is great.
Nice. And
Yeah.
when building that, what sort of challenges have you kind of walked into?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a whirlwind and quite interesting. I feel that I've unlocked like a different part of my brain. I feel like normally, working in tech, you do like, if A equals B, then do C. And you're used to, that's the outcome always. If it doesn't work, you can very easily debug that. And now it's like I'm having a conversation, even setting up the agent, I have to converse with the agent. And I'm, removing punctuation and seeing how that changes the outcome. And as well as the agent having to understand me, I'm having to understand the agent, which is really interesting. And it's been very challenging, actually, because you're really just like learning on the spot about what works and what doesn't. And it's constantly changing on a daily basis. They're bringing out updates all the time. So I think that has been challenging, as well as that. Shwetha talked about the testing. That has also been challenging. We had to, as we were testing and working towards quite tight deadlines, we had to really reevaluate our test strategy. I mean, obviously, testers are like, if it hasn't passed, then I can't pass it and we can't deploy it. And we're like, well, this thing, it's going to respond differently every time. It's understanding your query differently. 1 out of 10 times, it's not going to work. Even, ChatGPT fails sometimes. And it's been really interesting us having to navigate that and know, what is classed as successful for us.
Yeah, it touches to a really important point with this. You talked about, normally coders, as we said earlier on, are very used to doing with a very specific set of kind of instructions that give you a very kind of deterministic outcome. Whereas we're dealing now with generative AI, which gives you a probabilistic outcome, and it's not the same every time. So have you got any advice? So say the listeners to this podcast, there might be somebody listening thinking about going on their first agentic journey. What maybe are the lessons that you've learned that you could give them some words of wisdom about what they should or shouldn't do?
So for us, one of the basic things that we worked on when we started thinking about agentic AI is our guardrails. What are our basic principles when it comes to guardrails that we want to apply before doing anything with the agents? We had a very clear set of guardrails. As an example, say as a user, I am interacting with an agent. I should only have access to the data that I have access to without using the agent. As in, quite strict with respect to the security side of things, because we are in a highly regulated environment. We also set up certain rules. The agent should only answer queries that are related to me as an individual, rather than the whole portfolio of products that McGill offers. So we spent a lot of time with our product owners setting these guardrails and understanding what are the most critical elements of this for him. From a product owner perspective, it was less of I want the agent to answer these questions, I want the agent to perform these actions. It was more of I want to make sure the agent do not do any decision making on behalf of the user. I want to make sure that the agent is not providing any, let's say, business advice to the users of the agent. So there were some strict guardrails that we set up, and I would say that's quite critical to be successful with an agentic AI implementation. The other thing that is taking the people that are in the organization along with you in the journey, because I know that when it comes to AI and agentic AI, we talk a lot about technology, right? What's the technology that's being used to implement this? I mean, whereas I would say the technology probably comes last. It's about what the business needs are. How do we take the people that are in the organization along with you in this change so that they feel comfortable and they have a sense of security when we are looking to go live. I think that was quite critical to us when it came to the implementation.
Yeah, we're hearing this again and again, aren't we, Yoshi, from people that, the tech is one thing, but it's got to be taken into account with the people and the culture. So how did you go about sort of, because it's something that we're very passionate about. It's like you can implement the best, most high-tech solutions on the planet, but if people aren't ready for the adoption, it's just not going to happen. So how did you get people used to it? And maybe how has your team's day-to-day changed since it's gone live?
I would say that more, I mean, again, coming back to the culture and the people element, of course, we've gone live with this. It's a technology change, but that has also brought in like an overall growth mindset towards AI within the organization. I mean, equally, everyone is excited about AI and they want to see on a day-to-day basis what AI can bring to the table for them as an individual and for the whole organization. So, I mean, the whole now, I mean, the technology is there, but this is about being in the game, leveraging the advancements in the technology where opportunities are plenty. I would say that as a main element of this.
Shwetha, you mentioned something just now which I found very interesting, because you guys work in a very highly regulated environment, and with AI, a lot of it is focused around R&D and innovating where you can, and you can stack LLMs and build agentic workflows and build a lot more value. But being in such a high regulated environment, how much room have you had to innovate?
So I would say that we have taken small steps towards this so that then, every step we take towards implementing AI, there's a bit of, additional trust on the technology, on the platform and what we are trying to do, isn't it? So initially, like Shreya said, we looked at, are there a set of questions that the agent can answer for the user that are non-controversial? It is okay for an agent to answer. And then slowly we have developed that agent to be able to perform actions on behalf of the user. Obviously, that is agentic AI, isn't it? Like increasing efficiencies from an end user perspective. So, taking it in small steps where every step also brings value to your organization has been like our approach towards this.
Cool. And Shreya, you also said something that I found quite interesting. You mentioned that these things are trained, not programmed. They're not designed in that sense. And you can get different outputs every time, right? And a new skill that you might learn is the ability to interact with these things using natural language. Do you now find that people who are naturally good at socializing and being able to communicate clearly have a advantage in this space?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I guess I hadn't thought of it like that. But when you think about structuring prompts and how much that affects the output, it makes sense. Probably not just socializing, but having like an analytical understanding of what it is that you're asking. Are you providing enough context? Are you using, in our system, for example, we have cases where we'll use a word which might mean something in the wider world, but we're using it for a very specific use case. And we need to make sure that we're sort of providing like a rule book or like a Bible in a sense to the agent and giving it enough context to you have to make sure it's not providing you with inaccurate responses without realizing, just because it's understanding it as a natural language and you're understanding it as a context industry based or just company subjective type thing. So yeah, I don't know really. I guess that's an interesting experiment. I think for me it has been a combination of becoming a better conversationalist, but also using my technical skills to add inputs in the same way that you would if you were building a workflow, and make sure you have the inputs and you have the outputs and you're providing the space and the instruction that's what you need in order to complete this action. Otherwise, I think you'd increase the margin for error.
And just in that space then, right? Because so we're in construction and you're in insurance broking. A lot of the outputs or the documents that we create will be quite hefty, heavy in a lot of text. And I was listening to Andre Karpathy the other day, and he said, the first use case that people were doing with AI was, chatbots, but then it was getting the AI to rewrite things so you can communicate with other people. But I guess at this point, there is the potential whereby the documents that you're creating will also be absorbed and read by another large language model. So do you consider that when your outputs to actually also be more conducive for an LLM to read than a human, or do you kind of balance that, or just focus it more on a human to read the output?
It depends on the target audience for the output, right? If the target audience is human, then we should be focusing on that user experience element. And I think in the world of AI, we should not miss that there are people at the end of the journey. So I would say that that's quite important. So it depends on the target audience of the documents. And I do think that AI or the LLMs are advancing in a way that it's no longer very strict that the format of the document has to be this, right? I mean, the other day I was in a meeting, I didn't take my laptop, I scribbled notes on my notebook. I came back to my desk, took a photo of this, uploaded to one of the tools that we have got access to, and asked it to summarize what I had written. So I don't think the
Well,
format really matters when
well,
it comes to LLM. So
you've got better handwriting than me then, Shwetha. I'll tell you what, that's
it
going to
was
be
funny. I
AI's
mean, I
greatest
would say
challenge if it can get mine done.
some of it was a bit, like it wasn't clear from my handwriting. Some of the output was not right. But, I had actually scribbled with some bullets here and there on the paper, marking what my key points are. And I mean, we are currently experimenting an AI tool internally, and I just wanted to try my hands on uploading this. And I was surprised at the output. So LLMs are less restricted by how the input should be now, and as days goes on that will be less restricted. But if the target audience for a document is an individual, is human brain, we still need to cater for that.
Now, anyway, until the computers totally take over, right? But just moving on to the next topic then, because I really wanted to talk about, and we've already touched on it slightly, which is we get very lost in the tech and then we forget about the collaboration and the culture. And what I've struck from both of your profiles is you've both worked across diverse teams. And what do you think makes collaboration actually work in transformation, whether that's digital transformation or anything else? Is there kind of some key points or key things that come across every time from your experience?
I mean, from my experience, having people from diverse backgrounds in the team bring different perspective to the table. That's quite important. If you are from different backgrounds, if you are from, let's say, different countries, the way you've been brought up, the way your education was, your background is, you do automatically bring different perspectives to the table. And at McGill, we are quite fortunate to be working with people from diverse backgrounds. So diversity is quite important. I mean, my team within McGill and Partners, we are 4 girls, I would say. We're proud to say that we are a girl powerhouse. And we do have across the organization, diversity is in there. I would say that gives us a competitive edge when it comes to different perspectives coming to the table.
Yeah. And when we talk about AI, it's so important, isn't it? Because we know about how the fact that a lot of these models can have inherited bias because of things like that. So the more we can kind of ensure that the way that people implementing these models is diverse, the better the outputs will be. So that's to be applauded. But how do you build trust in a team when you're introducing sort of high stakes, high tech change like this? It's really difficult to get that balance right, because it's not like rolling out a SaaS software in terms of what you're getting, as we talked about earlier, and you can kind of measure the response. You've got to kind of innovate and you've got to be brave, because we're at the cutting edge effectively with this. But at the same time, that if you go too fast and there's a problem with it, because of the probabilistic nature of these models, it can have quite a negative impact, and then that can show itself off in low adoption rates, etc. So how do you kind of get around that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, but as a team, I would say that we're creating a trusted environment is kind of giving the pen to individuals for them to work in their space. That's quite critical for me as a manager as well. So, I mean, I don't micromanage the individuals in my team. They have the pen to do what they want. We have created safe space to experiment. I mean, I know that we discussed about regulatory requirements being in a quite regulated environment. We have created safe space internally where people can experiment. The other thing about trust is gaining the trust from the stakeholders in the organization, whether that's innovating or even if it's a small change that we are doing. That trust is quite important, and we have come a long way as a team with that, I would say. And for me as an individual, being a good listener is quite key to all of this, whether it's with your team members or business stakeholders, etc. Being a good listener, giving the time to listen to their concerns, risks that they see in this platform is quite important. And I mean, again, this goes back to taking the time to set the guardrails, taking the time to set the rules of engagement of what we want to achieve, what our objective is as a team. That's quite important to building the trust in the within the team.
Okay, you mentioned
I
something
would-
quite
sorry.
interesting. Oh, Shreya, you go.
No, sorry. I was just going to add to that and say, I think that when it comes to collaboration and building trust outside of technology, I think the feedback loop is really important as well. Like, we deploy the initial version of the product, but that's not where it ends. For our agent, we have weekly meetings to look at the conversations users have been having and see how is the agent behaving, where is it getting stuck. We have to have conversations like, how much weight does one person's question hold? Is that, now a change that we should make, or is this a one-off? And I think working together like that continuously also helps encourage that feeling of collaboration. There is no ending point, basically.
Okay. So when you look at those questions, anything surprising come out? Is there anything that where it's kind of changed your strategy because of the way that people are interacting with it? Or has it been quite predictable?
Interestingly, it hasn't been predictable. There were a lot when we first rolled it out. And it's not that the questions were rogue in any sense. It's just the way that we had designed it was not the way that people were using it. I can't actually think of any specific examples right now, but I remember we sort of had a list and we were like, oh, we haven't accounted for any of these things. So that's really interesting as well when you think about us, making sure we're not working in silos. And I guess there is a collaboration with external users as well, in the sense that we are paying attention to how they're using the tool, because we can only sort of make guesses. So yeah, sorry, I don't know, Shwetha, if you can think of any specific examples, but I remember us having that realization.
This feedback loop and understanding what the users are after. I mean, we like Shreya said, we have a standing meeting every week with our product owner to go through the questions that's been asked so that we can improve the agent, provide the agent with more information, data as we go along. And I think that's quite important. When we touched upon this earlier, Yoshi, there's one bit around implementing and just deploying something to production, that there is this constant monitoring, constant feedback loop, making sure that you're aligned to the business. That's quite important.
Was there a realization from those questions that perhaps people need those prompting skills updated? Because what I found a lot is you look at the questions and you realize people are treating it like Google. And we all know that if you prompt an agent or even ChatGPT with a Google-like prompt, it's just not going to work as well. So did you have the same sort of experience?
Yeah, I would say so. When we went for like the next release of the agent, we've kind of changed our strategy a little bit in that space where the agent is prompting the user around what they would want. Earlier, this was mentioned. I can see that you have a policy coming up for renewal. Do you like to renew? Like providing that initial guidance to the user, also to say that I can help you with these things. Do you want help in this space? Like just that initial guidance, right? When an agent is available to you within a platform, we made sure that they couldn't ask the agent to order pizza as part of our guardrails. But I mean, like having a blank piece of paper in front of you, that there's always guidance required for an end user.
There's a growing issue that I found within large language models, and more specifically reasoning models. And I'm interested to hear your guys' take, because you work in a highly regulated environment where there's a lot of risk. When OpenAI released the O3 and the O4 models recently, the research that had gone into it showed that they were hallucinating so much more. I think it was O1 was hallucinating 17%, and these were hallucinating like, I think it was either 34 or 43%. So there's so much more. And the rhetoric that it gives is compelling, even though it can be wrong. So it might say, I don't know, this information has been pulled from, I don't know, construction playbook, whatever, page of this section. And then you go and look into that, you don't find it. You click on the link, you don't find it. But it is compelling, right? Because it's logical. So my first question is how do you guys detect that those false positive responses? And secondly, how do you manage it?
So, I mean, there's few, I might be repeating some of this. So we did spend a lot of time in testing and making sure that, like broadly, the agent is not hallucinating. And the other bit to this is going with an existing, like a trusted technology. Like, for example, Salesforce offers a trust layer where, where some of this has already been tried and tested by them as a technology provider. So we've got advantage with that we have the technology already in place for us to, safe playground for us to try some of this, where, in a regulated environment, it's safer to use a technology like Salesforce Agent Force. That was, I would say, one of the advantages for us.
Cool. And another follow-up question to this one, because this is something that I've been struggling with. And when we build AI tools and you implement them in the business, you want people to adopt and use them, right? But then sometimes when I look to understand the ROI or the effectiveness of the AI, I'll look at different type of metrics. I'll look at if someone can ask a question and get the answer in the first go, but that will be counterproductive to engagement, right? Because if you want to farm engagement, you'll either ask follow-up questions or you want people to engage. So if you're going by message count or you're going by usage, it might be not giving you the right indication of if you're doing it right or not. What is your guys' sole key metric which lets you know that something that the AI is performing well or how you intended it to?
I would say it's more focused on the business value than like specific return on investment rate. Most of the AI experiments at this stage are currently less return on investment, more where AI where this brings business value. I mentioned earlier, it's the mindset that's been created in the organization. Everyone is thinking about how they can use the technologies available to them to bring efficiencies in their day-to-day data. It's like a top-down.
Yeah, I would also say we continually refer to and refine our roadmap, and we think about what are we building today that could help us in 6 months for this potential use case. We're not quite there for this, like for something, but we will be if we continue to do this. And I think there's a lot of value in that as well, that you might not be able to measure it in tangible outcomes at it's in the moment.
It's definitely very hard to quantify, and I think everyone's finding that a challenge. Just before we go on to the last section, I just wanted to ask you about kind of the elephant in the room with a lot of these conversations, which is that the power of these tools and the speed at which it's moving means that we are going to have a massive transformation, not just in the insurance industry, in all workplaces over the course of probably the next 5 years. And a lot of people are very worried, and I think rightly so, in terms of job displacement. What's your view on that? Do you think this is going to have a significant impact on the job market? Or do you think, as has happened in all other sort of revolutions, we'll just find other roles for people to move into for what the agents effectively automate?
Yeah, this is an interesting question, because recently I was at an event where, there was a discussion about what you would be looking for in people as part of recruitment going forward, especially, let's say, as a developer, because it's less so about do you know this coding language or do you know this platform now, right? So adaptability was being discussed as one of the main skills that people need going forward. You could be your role could be changing every year based on the advancements in AI. So I think that's quite, I would say that's quite important. Personally, I don't think people are going to be out of jobs. It's just adaptability and like retraining into doing something else. Like, as an example, call center, if we go back to the call center example that we had, the call center agents, the human, they don't need to probably answer some basic questions, right? But they would still need to manage some of the complex cases where human brain and the intelligence is required. And they could be used in actually training the agent. They could be trained up in prompt engineering, so that they are training the agent rather than attending calls. So I just think that the skills are going to change. There's more different expectations from individuals, but I don't think we're going to be out of jobs. Personally, that might change.
That's kind of my view as well, I think, at the moment, in terms of it's the people who will be left behind will be the people who don't adapt, exactly as you said, Shwetha. You've got to adapt, and some of these skills, it's not like effective. You don't have to learn to code or anything like that. A lot of it's just learning how to prompt these AIs and how to orchestrate them and work with them. Right, just believe it or not, it's been such a great conversation. We're getting towards the end. I hadn't even noticed, actually. But I just want to move to the last segment, which is a bit of fun, really, more than anything else. I just want to ask each of you a kind of off-topic question. So maybe I'll ask Shwetha, you ask the first one, and then Yoshi can ask Shreya the second one. So Shwetha, for you, what's something outside of your job that would surprise people outside the industry? Something about your job, sorry, that would surprise people outside the industry.
I mean, for my role here, I would say the main thing that might surprise people is my job is very less about sitting in a room and writing lines of code, right? It's a lot about people. And I mean, we touched upon this, how I take the people in the organization along with me in this technology journey. How we have these requirements, the forefronting requirements gathering, design conversations in the organization. I think that's how like some of our roles are changing. Shreya would say this was a conversation we were having as part of the yearly review as well. Like what she was recruited for and what she did a year ago is completely different to her day-to-day role now. I just think that's how our roles are changing on a day-to-day basis. It's less about being a nerd sitting in a dark room and writing lines of code. It's about being able to forefront conversations and talk to people.
It's really interesting, actually. Both Yoshi and I, we're doing a course at the moment, a master's in artificial intelligence. So we're actually learning to code. And we're saying to ourselves, we probably don't need to learn every single kind of command. We just need to learn how to work with the AI. And as long as we've got a basic understanding, that's changed the role of a coder, right?
Yeah, critical logical thinking element is more important than knowing exactly the syntax of the code or exactly knowing how to navigate through a system, because an agent can help you navigate to the screen that you want to navigate. Right? I remember, I mean, my background is in SAP, so we had to remember transaction codes to type in and get to a screen. I mean, all of that is gone now, right? That's like olden days.
Outside of AI, or I guess technology within insurance, is there any other technology which has kind of grabbed your attention or that you're secretly obsessed with?
Right now, because of where my family is, etc., I was thinking about advancement in the aviation industry. So my niece is quite obsessed with working through to become a commercial pilot. We both were having a conversation about this, and she was saying that I may not be in the air like to become a pilot. I might just be sitting in a room using controls to fly the aeroplane. And my sister is a bit concerned about the overall safety and all of that comes with being a pilot, right? So she was trying to explain that it may not be that in 5 years time I might just be sitting in my room in Toronto flying an aeroplane. So there's a lot, right?
So recently, I've been obsessed with fighter jet planes, right? Purely because I picture myself being in a commercial plane, and you can see these fighter jets flying past you. So just the idea of them sitting in the cockpit, seeing what they see, going at the speeds which they can do, is what caught me in. I can't imagine sitting in my room flying a plane.
I mean, that might be the future.
I think it probably is. Shreya, I think we did you a disservice there by not letting you answer questions. I'm going to ask one more. So what advice would you give to your younger self entering the tech world now? So if there's somebody listening who's maybe just started a career at university, is there anything you would tell them from your years of experience?
Yeah, it's kind of it feels like a silly story, but I actually have a history degree. And so whenever I do an interview, people are like, what? And yeah, I thought it would be a journalist or a lawyer or something. And I just sort of fell into tech, and it happened very serendipitously. And I'm really happy with where I am. So I guess the advice I would give is just sort of be open to the fact that pretty much everything is tech. And you could be doing something that you have no idea exists. And just because you might not feel formally trained for it doesn't mean that you can't do it. I still feel very much that the skills that I initially studied, I do use, like analytical skills. And now that we're talking about conversational agents, I used to write 10,000 word essays all the time. And I do feel like that helps me. I also, I think I always had in my head a stereotype that technology was very logical and black and white. And actually, I find that there's a lot of creativity in what I do, and that it's finding creative solutions to problems and having to use workarounds sometimes if it's not straightforward. And I really enjoy that. So I think don't write things off just because they're not what you think they are, and just like be open to things that can fall into your lap, take opportunities.
Brilliant advice. As Steve Jobs said, you can only join the dots later. Often it's not very clear how you get into a position, but like you say, be open to opportunities. And I think that's a wonderful story. And you're being able to use my son's doing a history A-level at the moment, so I know how much writing goes into that. And that is a particular skill. And funnily enough, who would have thought maybe 5 years ago that would become a skill to help you in prompting? It's crazy how things kind of turn out. But listen,
I have read that in the future there'll be more demand for courses like history and English than computer science because of how the world is evolving. So it's a real
human
thing.
skills, absolutely. I think that is very, very possible, Shwetha, because if you assume that agents are going to be doing a lot of the grunt work in terms of coding, the one thing that we'll all come back to is human skills, and one of those things is communication. And how do you learn to communicate? You learn to communicate by researching, writing, being able to actually get your thoughts across. So I think that's absolutely.
It's also your
true.
metacognition, right? Your ability to think about thinking, learning about learning. I think that the meta element is where we might find a competitive edge.
Absolutely, absolutely. What a great place to end. And Shreya and Shwetha, thank you so much for coming on. It's been illuminating for us to hear a real life example of agentic AI being used in an industry. So thank you so much for your time. Is there any last kind of bits of information you want to depart where people can find out more about either of you or McGill and Partners?
I would say that I've thoroughly enjoyed being on this podcast. I mean, I think the whole conversation, it was like a 4-way conversation, and from you and Yoshi as well. Thank you for that. It's been a great experience. And if people want to find us, and of course, reach out to us. We're both on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thanks. It's just been great. Thanks for having us.
Excellent. We'll make sure we put your links in the show notes. If anyone wants to follow Shreya or Shwetha, then just go to the show notes attached to this podcast and link in with them. And I'm sure they'll be very happy to hear from you. But until next time, we'll say bye-bye to everyone. And thank you again, both. Project Flux is here. Just want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Construct AI. For anyone interested in looking at Construct AI, the link's in our show notes. There's a free tier that you can play around with. Yoshi and I have been using it for a good year since it was originally launched, and we get a huge amount of value out of it. So I thoroughly encourage everyone to go onto the Construct AI site and have a play around.
Cool. And guys, before we sign off, please don't forget to share, follow, and like all of our stuff. So that helps us to engage with you and understand a bit more about what you want so we can bring it to your doorstep as early as possible.
See you later, everyone.